Professor Fetzer has a speciality in the philosophy of science, how we know what we know, and how to, he knows about the methodology, how to sift out what is true from what is not true.
Thanks for having me here. I'm a last-minute guest. I also would like to thank Ronald Reed, producer Gary Popkin, and his crew of Haupt, Fire TV, for inviting Jim Fetzer to New York. A former leading free energy researcher called Stephen Jones at that time already a fraud. Malloy later was mysteriously assassinated, by the way, 2 weeks later after the famous 2004 PICO conference, we call it the Magruber conference, Canada.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here since I arrived on Saturday. In addition to accomplishing some maybe 20 different projects, I've learned a fair amount about 9/11 Truth New York, and I just want you to know that I think that Tom and Luke are doing the right thing, and I'm very proud to be here with you today.
Thank you.
What I do want you to know is that as a philosopher, I have a profound commitment to truth, and as a philosopher of science, a considerable understanding that science is our most reliable method for discovering the truth, and that includes the truth about 9/11. Parts of what I have to say will be somewhat theoretical, but they bear an important relationship to what I'm going to explain later about the search for truth about this difficult subject. Truth can be defined as a relationship between beliefs and reality, where our beliefs are true when they correspond to reality. Reality, in turn, can be analyzed as everything there is, the way things are, what is the case. It's not just a simple observation, but it can be an observation in a context where you're dissatisfied because you don't understand what's going on. Manifestly, that's true of 9/11. We have phenomenon, we really don't understand what's going on, therefore we're interested in exploring what's going on. Some kind of laser, maser, plasmoid, antimatter source. And we have photographs that day, and we know it's that day because Building 7 is still standing, where you're looking across the debris field and it's virtually ground level. Which means something's going on here that we don't anticipate. It doesn't look very much as though this could possibly be the result of a controlled demolition, a classic controlled demolition. In fact, the buildings are blowing up from the top down, in Judy Woods' memorable metaphor. It's as though you had 2 gigantic trees that are turning to sawdust from the top down. Now, when you look at the mass, that these 2 buildings are destroyed in about 10 seconds. These 2 buildings are destroyed in about 10 seconds. The devastation to the entire World Trade Center is massive. That you have odd effects in Building 6, a huge gouge in Building 6. In Building 5, that you have these like cookie cutter incisions in Building 5. Building 4, you have half the building gone, half the building standing. Building 3, you have a huge wedge-like gashing as though a giant Paul Bunyan took an axe and slashed it. We have a lot of peculiar features here. In addition, we have the fact that the bathtub remained functionally intact. It's not that the bathtub wasn't damaged, it is functionally intact. It continued to serve as a bulwark, as a dike against the Hudson River water. 47 plus 240, I take it it's 287. The only way you can get a redundant steel structure building like this to suffer any collapse at all is if all those 287 columns collapse simultaneously. That's a huge task. And of course, you've got 287 on every floor, and there are 110 floors. Think about it. Stephen Jones has suggested that 3,000 pounds of RDX could be sufficient. This sounds to me quite ridiculous, but I'm willing to concede that I haven't made calculations, but the idea that that would be the case just seems to be far-fetched in the extreme. Thermite is a very seductive idea because it seems to offer a simple solution to a complex problem. If you believe that the buildings were destroyed using thermite, then you exonerate yourself or excuse yourself from having to think about things like the airplane impact, the fuel delivery, how the melting point is steel, UL certification, how hot the fire is actually burned and all that. You just don't have to be burdened with that because you have the answers, thermite and crewmate. And during a recent interview with Judy, and I've interviewed her on my radio shows 6, 7, I don't know, 8 times. Why? Because she is the leading expert in this field in the world today. Look, I'm in the position to make this kind of judgment. I have 35 years teaching logic, critical thinking, scientific reasoning. I published 28 books, most of them in scientific fields that are among the most difficult and demanding, including not only the philosophy of science, but the theoretical foundations of computer science, artificial intelligence, cognitive science, and most recently evolution and mentality. I founded an international journal, an international society. I've had massive academic distinctions. Why would I be out there compromising my reputation and my integrity if I weren't calling the shots the way I see them? I've spent my whole life speaking the truth, and I'm not going to cease to do it now just because, you know, the most important research going on in this field is being subjected to ridicule from a wide variety of directions for a whole lot of really bad reasons. And I say this is absolutely commendable. This is completely first-rate work. It's the cutting edge of the science of 9/11. I have looked enough at Morgan's work, and I now appreciate its character in the following respect. It's not a simple no-plane thesis. It's a thesis about the visual record. It's a thesis about the videos, about the films, about the photographs. The argument is that there are anomalies in the visual record. Remember when In Plain Sight was released and Dave von Kleist was talking about not just the pause, but also the flash when the plane approaches the building. A lot of people were upset about that. And personally, looking at that footage, I'm inclined to think that there is a feature on the plane. Boeing was approached about it, wouldn't talk about it, said they couldn't discuss it. They knew what it was, but they couldn't discuss it in the name of national security. Today, if you ask me what do I think, well, I think, I would guess, that the buildings were hit with what I have taken to be military versions of 767s that were used as jet refueling tankers so they deliver a bigger jet load. But Morgan's research, and Nico's and others, I find sufficiently serious that I cannot claim to know that. Look, I have seen myself videos of a cruise missile heading toward the buildings, of a hypersonic plane flashing by the buildings, of a plane coming to the South Tower, of no plane coming to the South Tower, where those videos were taken from a similar perspective at a similar time. And not all of those can be authentic. It's an elementary fallacy I teach students to avoid, to discount an idea because of its origins. It's called the genetic fallacy. So you could have a paranoid schizophrenic coming up with an idea that happens to be a brilliant idea. And I'm very grateful to you for inviting me here tonight. Thank you.
Years, and on the same level, Fetzer is not responding to our additional logical, mathematical, analyzing evidence on TV fakery and the investigative results on direct entries. So the questions is misleading because it's based on a philosophical hypothesis. Since I'm a multiple personality, I can only argue on an investigative level.